Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. So Jason, along with the help from Amon, has been doing this translation of Dao De Jing. Today, we are going to go through the entire Dao Jing part, which is 1 through 37. The format is that Jason is going to put his translation on the screen. We are going to go 3 verses at a time, and I'm going to ask for volunteers to read. Please volunteer to read the translation in English. And then we will, after reading the 3 verses, Jason and Amon are going to make quick comments on it, maybe 2 to 3 minutes each. And then I'm going to open it up for comments on the verses. So just focus, no questions at this point, because we want to cover all 37 verses. So try to keep, what is it that you get from this, any of these verses? How do they connect with the core of the Dao? How do they connect with the other verses that you have written? Try to say that in less than 1 minute. All right, 45 seconds preferred. So that's the format, and then we'll go to the next 3 verses. So folks, we're going to start with verse number 1, 2, and 3. Let's start with Chang, followed by Joe. Chang.
Okay. Can I read the Chinese too?
No, please read only the English.
Oh. The Dao which can be expressed is not the unchanging Dao. The manifestation which can be named is not the unchanging manifestation. Nothingness is manifested as the origin of nature. That's 3, right?
No. 3.
All the way through.
All the way through.
Being is manifested as the source of all things. Through the unchanging nothingness, you can observe knowability of the Dao. Through the unchanging being, you can observe the subtlety of the Dao. These two of nothingness and being are both from the Dao, but manifested differently. Both are profound mysteries. This profound mysticism is the gate to understand all unknown of the Dao.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, if you could read number 2. Folks, go ahead and volunteer to read number 3.
When the people of the world know what makes the beautiful beautiful, the concept of ugliness arises. When they know what makes the good good, the concept of evil arises. Therefore, being and nothingness coexist in growth. Difficulty and ease coexist in completion. Longness and shortness coexist in forms. Superiority and inferiority coexist in comparison. Music and voice coexist in harmony. Front and back coexist in attachment. That's why the sage manages. That's why a sage manages works with Wu Wei, conducts teaching with no words.
Is more.
All things grow without initiating from the sage, multiply without being possessed by the sage, act without depending on the sage. The successful achievement is not claimed by the sage because he never claims it. The achievement can be long-lasting. A and B.
No more.
Okay. Oh, all right, sorry.
When you see the dash line, that means that's the end.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Margarita. Margarita, could you read number 3, please?
Oh, please also read the title. Okay, please.
Okay. Appeasing the people. Do not promote the talented, so people will not contest. Do not value rare goods, so people will not steal. Do not show the desirables, so people's mind will not be disturbed. For this reason, the governance of the sage is to empty people's mind, but fill their bellies, weaken people's volition, but strengthen their bones or bodies. Always keep people away from knowing and desiring, so those with knowledge dare not interfere. Practice Wu Wei, and nothing will be ungoverned.
Thank you. Thank you, Margarita. Jason, if you could comment on these three, and then
Okay.
it will be Amon. And if anybody else wants to comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark.
Okay, I think this, thank you everybody to read it. That's the first time I have a chance to concentrate on what I am writing in the different kind of perspective. And I start to make the title. So, and I will also like to feel like how does the title changes the meaning of the entire reading. So just to make it quick, I think these 3 chapters, we can see the sequence. Even before I didn't believe the sequence makes sense, but this time I get this different kind of feeling. Look, guys, the first chapter is have the overall talk about the mystery, the unknowability, and the profound meaning of Dao, and what's being, what's not being. That's very, very beginning of the metaphysical question. And then chapter 2 move to the relativities, and which the long, short, tall, being and not being, long, short, tall, high, low, they are all relativity. But the main point is the moral sense, okay, our moral, okay, it's also relative. So let's put his Dao's Lao Tzu's moral teaching on the 2nd chapter. And of course, when we talk about moral, if we elevate it, we go to the political. So the 3rd chapter started to talk about the purpose of political, okay, as a ruler, what you need to do. So the title also important, this one, talk about appeasing the people, basic taking care of people's belly, okay, not the appearance. So I think that's the, if you read the 3 chapters together, it looks like, you know, it's a move from metaphysical, moral, political. Yeah, that's how I like to comment. Thank you.
Amon.
I'm actually really impressed with that understanding, because I almost am ashamed that I didn't catch it. Yeah, it does seem to progress right through that very sort of standardized method of philosophy, excuse me, philosophy, working from the metaphysical to the ethical to the political. These are fairly common steps that are made in all political or in all philosophical discourses. Something else sort of strikes me as I was listening to these, that he's initiating a new pedagogy, a new idea of how people can learn a thing. That, and to do so, this is the perfect topic, because this is an unknowable thing. And therefore, there needs to be a different way of acquiring it or of understanding it. And in these first 3 chapters, you get familiarized with just the sense that this is going to be very different subjects, very different lessons. And so immediately, the onus is placed on the listener, the student, the reader, to pay a little deeper attention than they might have otherwise, because these lessons aren't going to be able to just be spoon-fed. You're going to have to extract them from what's presented in front of you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I will say, you know, Dao ke Dao, Fei Chang Dao, Ming ke Ming, Fei Chang Ming. I mean, that is at the level that, along with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and Word was with God. I mean, that, and then yesterday we read the Jnaneshwari, starting with Om Namoji Adya, one sentence, you know, capturing the heart of everything in one sentence. So that's what I love about the first one. Joe.
Yes, so that is interesting with the idea of the metaphysical, the moral, and the political. I didn't catch that either. But what sticks out in the first 3 verses for me specifically are the naming of things and the limitations that comes along with that. And then it goes into the idea of dualities. And then that's kind of interesting in and of itself, how you can't have good without evil and things that, one can't exist without the other. And then it branches into how we value things on the third verse. So I really think that that's an interesting way of actually progressing from this, from the metaphysical and to the political and moral. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Yogeshwar, followed by Chang. Yogeshwar.
Yeah, just on the second chapter where it's talking about the sage, yeah, just because we did it in Bhagavad Gita, and it's just this time that we did in Bhagavad Gita, it actually matches because the sage works, yeah, he does all the work, but not any work is attributed to the sage. So nothing, as in, he is not bound by any work. He's not actually, like, he does everything, but nothing is his. Like, that's why everything lives forever.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Next up is going to be Chang, Katie, and Kevin. Chang.
Yeah, I want to share. Yeah, it's interesting to see the sequence, from more abstract to more like applicable, political, which I don't totally agree with their method to manage people, but that's
yeah,
a different story.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Just a second. Hold on. We've got a big posse of people to throw people out. So we are going to, somebody has already taken care of it. So we got a whole posse. We got Joe and we got Evanique and stuff like that. So I think everybody's fine right now. I'm not going to let anybody else in unless I recognize them. Let me see here. Just a second here. Okay. All right. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, another thing I want to say about the second chapter about this relativity, I found it's quite interesting because we learned through the design way, it's all about the viewpoint you see things, so it's good or bad. If you have different viewpoint, it could be different. So I think this is interesting to understand. So you can step out of that good and bad like system. So you go to a bigger system. So you see good and bad, they are the same, basically. They're not that much difference. That's what I see connect to this. It actually helps me a lot in reality, how to see things. So people are more calmer. So whatever, just like a traditional Chinese story about Sai Wen Shima, the guy lost his horses, similar thing, the good people see good things, then he see it may not be good, then bad things happen. Then people see good thing, a bad thing, he saw it's not that bad, then good things happen. So it's all relative. So when we have that kind of mindset, it's much easier for us to deal with life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is going to be Katie, followed by Kevin. Just a second, Katie. I'm going to unmute. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first chapter. I think that goes back to a later chapter where I talked about that the Dao is not a scientific endeavor. So here I'm kind of modifying my thoughts a little bit by going back, and they're trying to explain like the origin of it all, but then I would just tie that back in with what Joe was saying, that if we try to name everything, that there are limits to what can be achieved, that it's really not a scientific pursuit.
Thank you. Next up is Kevin.
Thank you, Sanka. For me, it's the first chapter. Like I'm going to do it. You're right. The key sentence or capture all for each chapter. The first chapter, Dao can be told is not absolute or unchanged Dao. And a name is one instance. You can use a specific name. Also, it's nothing eternal. That's value above unknown. That's just here. A second one is the second chapter, 有无相生, the being, non-being, interdependent in growth. The birth, you can see that way. The third chapter is I like this. Weak their will, basically empty their mind or heart, full with their belly. That's a decent. First people have some food, drink, the basic necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So for me, this one and number 25 kind of hold the Dao. The 25 and the 4 lines of this is a way for me to hold the entire Dao in my hand. All right, let's go in for number 4. We're going to start with folks, in order to volunteer to read. How about you put an R when you want to read? So let's start with Nikolai. Nikolai, if you could read number 4.
Excuse me, probably skip the middle part. I darken. I try to remove.
No problem. The Tao is like a cup that is not filled up but functional, like deep water which stimulates the source of all things, like clear water which seems vaguely present. I don't know who produced Tao, but I know Tao existed even before the legendary heavenly ruler.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe reading number 5, followed by Chang reading number 6. Joe.
Nature does not practice benevolence. It treats all things like straw dogs. The sage does not practice benevolence. He treats all people like straw dogs. Is nature like a big bellow? It is empty but inexhaustible. The more it works, the more it produces. Too many teachings lead to exhaustion, rather to remain as an empty cup. Straight.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Chang.
The spirit of basins. The undying spirit of basins are like the profound females. The gates for the profound females are like the root of nature. Nature continuously exists, inexhaustibly functions.
Thank you. Thank you. So folks, now we're going to have comments by Amon on these 3 verses, then Jason, and then I'm going to open it up for comments. If you would like to comment on any of these 3 verses and their connections with other verses, their place in Dao, go ahead and type ! Amon.
Yeah, it strikes me as I'm able to hear this read out that even as chapter 4, the Dao is like, and then in the next one, is like, those are set forth in all 3 of these chapters. And that tells me that we're establishing not just the metaphors for understanding, but there's also the idea of establishing a model to work towards. Not quite the same as a goal, because it's like a cup that is not filled, therefore it's functional. Its emptiness is what makes it functional, or it's like the, this or that. It's like something that most people would look at and say, I can't be like that. There's no way to emulate that. But then it begins to tease out how you become more like this. And so, again, not spoon feeding the lessons, but you're starting to get an idea of, all right, this is what I should be striving towards.
Thank you, Amon. Next up is Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Amon. Yeah, I think basically we are thinking in the same way, okay, for these 3 chapters. And then probably in your translation, other English translation, probably you don't see the word cup here, okay? I think that means cup, okay? So the zhong they use is the teacup, and then it's the scene here. Basics, everything is empty. Okay, so the functionality is in its emptiness. I think in the next section we are going to read this part, and I'd like to focus a lot is on chapter 5 when we talk about it's kind of set to anti-Confucian's teaching. Okay, technically we should not say Confucian teaching, we should say so-called Ru, okay, which is Confucian's tradition, the tradition Confucian follow. So they are teaching about Ren, the benevolence. Okay, so Taoism is talking about this kind of virtue is bias. They have the directional. So related to chapter number 2, talking about the make something beautiful. It's if we make something beautiful, then they have ugly thing come out. So I think that's related. If you have something virtue to do something, and then the bias come. Okay, so the best way is treat everything like a straw dog. So this chapter 5 is a famous so-called straw dog argument. The ruler you should hand off. Okay, no bias. Okay, and even so-called Ren benevolence is no need. You just let them alone. I think that's the essence here.
Wonderful. Next up is going to be Evanik, followed by Kevin. Evanik.
Yeah, I was thinking of chapter 4 when it talks about not the Dao is like a cup that is not filled up but functional. And I know Amon was saying like an empty cup, but I was just thinking like if you go to chapter 5 as well, it talks about the cup again. In that last line, it says, too many teachings lead to exhaustion rather to remain as an empty cup. And my thought is that, you know, I didn't think of the cup as having to be empty because I think you need to be filled up with something, but it's not a void to be overfilled that where you're spilling out everywhere. And that was my thought. I could be off, but that's what I thought of when I saw that. It's like it's not that it's empty, that it's just not filled up and spilling everywhere.
Folks, people who have not commented before or have not read before, I'm going to give them, I'm going to have them jump ahead of the queue because I want to get as many people interacting as possible. So it's going to be Dave, Kevin, Chang, and Joe. Dave, and folks, please keep your comments relatively brief. You can take maybe 1.5 minutes, something like that, and we'll keep moving forward. Dave.
Yeah, Shrikant, the thing that got me this time was the note of the clear water. And I think we've talked about the importance of water before, but I'm relating it to the Dao is not the Dao. Water, if it's not rough, we can't see it. You can look down, you can see the fish, you can see the pebbles in the bottom of the stream. I thought that was an interesting comparison.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Next up is Kevin, Chang, and Joe. Kevin.
Yes, for each chapter, I try use based on my own evaluation, find the key sentence. For chapter 4, is the first one. 道冲而用之，或不盈。It's hollow. The Dao is hollow. Like we learn something, we build on the topic. We never fill up. Open-minded, like you have a beginner mind, like a child. That's why child doesn't mean they're from nothing every time. You could be act like nothing, but you have that mind. You kind of learning, feel some more border. For next chapter 5 is 多言数穷. By you many words, you're going to exhaust it. You keep seeing, naming, seeing, rather than hold the core. What's the core? Chapter 6. Out this one seems small. For me, I understand this way, not dying. 古生不死. The value of valley spirit never died. for human being, for ourselves. We see it, okay, if this earth without human being could be dark. This is true. Like earth has human being. I would say maybe earth without human being more beautiful could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Zheng, followed by Joe. Zheng.
Yeah, I want to talk about the chapter 5, about the the nature does not practice benevolence. I was trying to understand this chapter. It seems straw dog, maybe not a very pleasant to know we are treated like straw dog, but my understanding is that it shows the nature law or the Dao doesn't have preference. It's very neutral. So it's not like God, take care of you, but you have to follow the Dao, understand the Dao, because they don't know the difference between you, human, and other things. And that's my understanding about this sentence. Thank you.
Thank you, Zheng. Next up is Joe.
Yeah, I was going to basically, I'm going to be fast. I was basically going to make the same comment, this idea that there is this inherent bias that we have as human beings, and that nature does not make that distinguishing characteristic when it comes to that. I'll just say that for now. I have something to say about 4, but
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. My comment is, I think the most unusual thing about these 3 is number 6, because the number 6 is the only one which puts the female as the only element that explains everything. This is the only place. Otherwise, it's always yin and yang. This is saying that the female is the root of nature. I think this is, out of place. Yasuhiko had commented on this. He thinks it's from somewhere else, just plugged in, and doesn't really belong. So that's it. Next up is going to be number 7, 8, and 9. We're going to have James Cook, followed by Margarita reading. If you would like to read, go ahead and type R, and I'm going to give preference to people who have not spoken, not read before. James.
We also read the title.
Selflessness. Nature endures forever. The reason nature can endure forever is that it doesn't strive for itself. So it can survive for a long time. Therefore, the sage stays behind in order to lead, forgetting himself in order to endure. Only through selflessness can self-actualization be achieved.
Thank you, James. Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by Evanique. Margarita.
Yeah. On water. The highest form of goodness is the form of water. Water nourishes all things without striving against them. It always stays in the lowest places where most people do not want to stay. In this sense, the form of water is closest to Dao. Thou shalt know how to stay in a good place, think in good depths, deal in good manners, speak in good words, govern in good orders, work in good energy, move in good timing. If and only if one does not strive against others, like the form of the water, then one can be free from blame.
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is Evanique. Evanique, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Keep pouring water into a bowl. You better stop soon enough. Keep sharpening a blade. You cannot have it for a long time. Keep accumulating treasure in your house. You will invite break-ins. Keep showing off your achievement. You will be slandered. Thou shalt retire before going too far. This is the Dao of heaven.
Thank you, Evanique. So it's going to be now Jason, Amon, and anybody else who wants to comment, go ahead and type exclamation mark.
I would say this 7, 8, and 9, I think it's kind of like teaching for everybody. Okay, so I believe the lesson is quite obvious. And I like focus on number 8, which is on the water, okay, on the form of water. And then I will suggest, and I think that's quite helpful, if you look at this 7 lesson and think about water, that's probably the way to learn on this chapter. You think about the water, and then when the teaching talking about it in a good place, think about water, how water be in a good place. For example, thinking about the good energy. How does the water store energy, right? Think about the timing, okay? How does water doing on the timing, okay? So I think that's probably the practice or exercise we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up is Amon.
Yeah, 7, 8, 9, the keywords I took out of it were behind, low, knowing what's enough. I think those are the key lessons being imparted here. And if I try to put this in context of teaching of princeling, as we've discussed in the past, these are all about humility. These are about not presuming to say, oh, okay, I've got it, but having the humility to continue to absorb, to continue to receive, to continue to plumb your depths, to be sure, have you squeezed out every facet of this that there is to be taken? And the answer almost invariably is no, because this is unfathomably deep.
Thank you, Amon. Next up is going to be Chang, Joe, Evanique, and Kevin. Chang.
Yeah, I want to say also chapter 8 about water. Actually thinking, because most of the mainland China is inland, not coastal. I think that's the reason they think water, in the mainland is pretty calm and nice. It just reminds me of all the storm and hurricane. Then it's very different character of the water. So I want to remind that part. The reason they're talking about the water is in more the calm stage instead of like the hurricane type of water, which is with too much energy, I guess.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe, Evanique, Kevin, and Katie. Joe.
So I'll start really quickly with 8, that the importance of water is something that you kind of see throughout the Tao, in the sense that it's adaptable, it's fluid, and it's kind of like this idea of just the yin and the yang working together, as far as I'm concerned. Number 9 is reminds me of just understanding temperance. So that that too much of anything could be a bad thing, and not to look at things in excess, or not to seek things in excess. So I'll keep it.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Evanique.
Yeah, what I get through all these 3 chapters is this idea, like Amon said, of humility, but also of operating from the center rather than operating from the periphery. If you're operating from the center, you're doing all these things. You're thinking of others. You're moderating yourself. You know what you need, and you know what's excess. So I think that's what I got from all 3, is operating from the center.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Evanique. Next up is going to be Kevin, followed by Katie. Kevin.
Chapter 7, my picks the last 2 sentences. Forgetting oneself in order to endure only through self-lessness. The self-desire can be achieved. Basically, what if we take practice is I don't take care of myself first. I'm first, then do others to try to help others. Here, so if you do the selfless, you achieve your self-desire. Chapter 8 is the first, 上善若水. Best good is similar to water. It's a flow, adaptable, like, yeah. And chapter 9, the last one, 功遂身退. We also have idiom called 功成身退. 贴着道也. It's achieve is complete, then withdraw oneself. I don't want to take time for explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. I really like your comments. And I think especially I like you highlighting the key sentences. I think that's very useful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Katie.
Yeah, I was going to talk on number 9, knowing when to stop. I think also, I remember even before I did Dao De Jing, I remember sending someone an email. He had used the word superior, and I sent him an email, and I was like, well, that's great. You use that word, but now people aren't going to be able to enjoy what makes the people superior. They won't see it as like human potential. They'll be seeing it as something you're flaunting over them. And I was like, you're going to take away people's enjoyment.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. I'll just make one point about number 8. The thing I'm going to make a comment on the translations. One of the things that I like about Jason's translations is whenever he does these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's like, these are the lessons. And just by numbering them, it, I think, focuses your mind on them and the pattern between them. So that's all I had. Let's go to the next 3. We're going to have, let's see, I've lost track here. It's going to be, who would like to read? Give me a second. It's going to be Dave, followed by Joe. Dave.
Thank you, Shikant. Nothing is undone. Can you hold your soul and spirit as one without separating them? Can you focus your qui and not be supple like a newborn baby? Can you cleanse and introspect yourself without flaws? Can you take care of people and govern your state with wu wei? Can you open and shut heaven's gate like a woman? Can you open and shut your mind in the feminine, passive, receptive way? Can you know everything without using knowledge? Multiply your people and rear them. Multiply them without possession. Leave them without control. This is called the profound, mysterious virtue.
Thank you, Dave. Next up is Joe.
Chapter 11, Profound Emptiness. 30 spokes join a hollow hub. It is emptiness, the functionality of a wheel, is created. Clay is shaped to make a container. In its emptiness, the functionality of a container is created. Doors and windows are cut out from a room. In their emptiness, the functionality of a room is created. Therefore, we think of what is tangible as equipment, yet it is in their emptiness that the functionality is created.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Cheng. Cheng, you need to unmute.
Sorry. For the necessities, the 5 varieties of color blind one's eye. The 5 varieties of sound deafen one's ears. The 5 varieties of flavor numb one's taste. The games of riding and hunting frenzy one's mind. The valuable goods hinder one's behavior. For this reason, the sage provide for people's beliefs, necessity, instead of their eyes, appearance. Therefore, they shine pursuing the appearance and prefer to get necessity.
Thank you, Cheng. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment. Next up is going to be Amon, followed by Jason. Amon.
So I took just the key ideas from these 3 and turned them into almost a small haiku, but it's the question, can you operate from the hollow to fulfill what's needed? And that seems to be the questions here. Chapter 10, can you? Chapter 11, the hollow spoke, the hollow hub of a wheel, the hollow of a clay vessel. And chapter 12, getting distracted with the unnecessary and instead provide for people's bellies, what's needed. And so if you just take these 3 ideas and tie them together as a lesson, can you operate from a place of emptiness, of hollowness, and from there get what is actually needed. That seems to be the deepest, not, I shouldn't say the deepest lesson of the Dao, but it strikes right to the heart of what Taoists want someone to be able to accomplish.
Beautiful. Love the haiku, Amon. Next up is Jason.
Yeah, I think I make some changes and then I forget to correct it. So that's which one? 12, right? 11, 10? Oh, this one. Okay. 10. Actually, I changed my mind. If you are here, I did some research. I hope everybody is agree with me. They talk about the gate of heaven, shut and open. And I try to find the meaning of this one. How does open gate of heaven like a woman? Okay, it's strange. Okay, so I still feel strange. Then I figure out. Okay, and it probably means the gate of heaven means your gate of your mind. Okay, because in that time they call our sensor organ as gate. The gate is for seeing is eye, and the ear for sound, okay, and the nose for the smell, and the mouth for the taste. That's all gate. And then another gate, that's a gate of heaven, which means your mind could be heart or brain. So how you understanding, how to interpret that. So here you talk about, can you, in the feminine way, just like receiving way, not go out, but receiving. I think that's what the meaning. So I make from the change that yesterday. I think that probably fit the whole chapter. And the chapter 11, personally, I like this chapter a lot, because I think whenever like we drink coffee, we see a cup, we just touch the cup. But we forget why the cup is a cup, because it's emptiness. So everything we do, we only see the tangible part, but the intangible emptiness is its function. Same as a person, right? We do something, we see a person, but the space is the function. So I think that chapter 11, actually for myself, I think that's very important to me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Next up is going to be Chang, Kevin, and Joe. Chang.
Yeah, I want to look at the chapter 10 first. Yeah, so oh, not this one, sorry, chapter 11. Yeah, I also really like this chapter because it's actually talking about architecture as well. You know, the architecture, we all see the walls, but actually the space is what actually functional, useful. A lot of time, people without training, they don't really notice the space and also how the space brings the light. You know, that's actually the essence of architecture. Most people will only focus on the form and function. We go back to where Sullivan was talking about. And same as people, you know, sometimes we easily attract to the appearance of a person or the look. We forgot. There's another story, Mai Du Huanzhu, they're trying to buy this jewelry in the case, was so beautiful. People get the case and return the jewelry. So I think it happens a lot as metaphor. You know, as human, we easily attract with our sensing, you know, the appearance, the look. Good looking people are so popular in the world now. The magazines all over them, and nobody really care about the inside of the person. It takes much longer time or appreciation, a deeper understanding to really appreciate the inside of a person, which is I think the culture they promote instead of the current culture we experience.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Kevin, followed by Joe. Kevin.
Yeah, back to chapter 10, my pick is the last one. Basically, this is about first time the De appears. what's the 学德 Mr. 德 in the original text 生而不有，为而不恃，长而不宰 three defined the what's the 学德 in English would be what's I can't read they read Jason one. This multiply your people and rear them, multiply them without processing, lead them without control. This called profound mystery virtue. Chapter 11 is last, still last. I like mostly in Dao De Jing, therefore one. That's something conclude very useful. 故有之以为利 basically releasing part of you and wu, the being, not being, and benefit and usage. So that's the last one. Therefore, we think of what is tangible as equipment. Yet it is in their emptiness that the functionality is created. Chapter 12, I still like the last second. Last second is 是以圣人为夫，不为目. Therefore, sage provide her needs, not her desire. And also the last one is a bit like abstract. 去彼，取此. Leave that. You have to balance. I would abstract is you have to, you select one, you lost another one. By the way, one word so, 翻过 the 爽 the 无味之爽. Can you highlight that one, Jason? Thank you. That word, that time so negative. Now we so positive. We're like, whoa, we like, your taste is so great. We get excited, going to get drunk to that. It used to be, we take negative. Now, that's a fluff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by James. Joe.
So really quickly, there was one line in 10 that kind of sticks out for me is that, and it was, can you take care of people and govern your state with Wu Wei? So that specific line means, a great deal to me because I think this is the idea of not exerting force to rule over people. And at that particular moment in time, that really was something that people used as a default. So this idea of inaction is really highlighted here as far as the value and it can bring and the peace and tranquility that it allows for. Number 11, I agree with Jason. It's actually one of my favorites as well. Primarily is because we start to understand what things are by understanding what they're not. And understanding space actually is critical in that process. And even understanding this kind of the value of space, as Zhang had alluded to, in certain ways with architecture, how we look at a room, how we look at a cup. It's everything that makes it is the space that it within it. And that's part of, and there's a lot of other philosophical aspects of it I'm thinking of as well. It's like the idea of how you look at light and darkness, I can apply to this kind of idea as well. I'm going to leave my comments there.
Thank you. Next up is going to be James.
Okay, and one more person that loves number 11, one of my favorite ones. And I think I love the wheel. The wheel reminds me of bicycle wheels and car wheels. But especially like the car wheels, they even the car wheels, which are so heavy, they support 1 or 2 tons, or what 4 tons, 3 or 4 tons, but they're still empty. They're still hollow. They're still they have spokes, and the spokes they don't fill up the wheel. They actually compete. The designers compete with each other to decide how to create the space in the wheel. There's no need for it to be solid. It can be empty and yet be profoundly strong. And I find the mind works that way too. The mind, we know it contains cells and water and everything else that the body contains. But yet, the best way we can approach a text or a lesson is to assume that it is empty. We have to assume that it contains space. If we think our mind is already full, we won't learn anything.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, James. I just want to comment on number 10. I did not do the translations as Jason has done, but what I did was that I spent a lot of time trying to come up with titles for all the 81. And my title for this was "Can You?" ? And again, I want to highlight this number. I think the numbering is a very, very powerful tool, because no other translator has done it, but I think it just works because it shows you the sequence. It shows you that this is the kind of thing I'm focusing on, and these are the different variations of it. And Jason has used it again and again, and I think it works beautifully. All right, let's go to the next ones. Who would like to read? Go ahead and type R. Joe.
Treat fame, fame and shame. Treat fame and shame with fear. Care for great misfortune as caring for your body. What is the meaning of treating fame and shame with fear? Fame is worthless. We should be fearful whether we gain or lose fame. This is called treating fame and shame with fear. What is the meaning of care for great misfortune as caring for your body? Our great misfortunes come from our bodies. If we don't have bodies, where are the great misfortunes coming from? Therefore, if one cares for his body for the sake of the kingdom, he can be changed with the kingdom. If one loves his body for the sake of the kingdom, he can be entrusted with the kingdom.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Evanik, followed by Katie. Evanik.
Chapter 14, the Discipline of Dao. What we look at but cannot see is called colorless. Seen but not seen, we can call it colorless. Sorry, am I supposed to be reading the parentheses or no?
Okay, this one is a little bit different because I put the parentheses. That's another way to talk about. So I think you can read both in this one.
Okay. Yeah. What we listen to but cannot hear is called soundless. Heard but not heard, we call it soundless. When we reach for but cannot hold is called formless. Way. Seized but not grasped, we call it formless. These three are indistinguishable, so we treat them as one. Its upper side is not bright, its lower side is not dim. Its continuous movements are unnameable, and it returns to a state of nothingness. This stateless state, this imagineless phenomenon is called vagueness. Wan Wu?
Huang Hu, yeah.
Yeah. We cannot see it in front when we cannot we cannot see its front when we confront it, nor can we see its back when we follow it. Applying this ancient Dao to harness today's reality, we can know the ancient beginning. This is the discipline of Dao.
Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Katie.
The genuine.
If you could start with the title.
The title, Never Fullness. Is it a little bit blurry for other people too? Maybe would you mind expanding out the there? Sorry, I say can't. Yeah, the never fullness. The genuine in the old time Tao practitioner is ungraspable, unpredictable, mystical, and omniscient. His Tao is indiscernible. But we can know the indiscernible by the following 7 observations. Prudent as if wading through a stream in winter, vigilant as if fearing surrounding neighbors, dignified as if paying a formal visit, a wound like melting ice, simply natural like an uncarved block, vast like a valley, indistinguishable like muddy water. Who can rest in the muddy world and slowly cleanse? Who can move peacefully through the world and still grow? Those who hold this Tao never desire fullness. Because they never desire fullness, they can persevere without being reformed.
Thank you. All right, next up is going to be Jason, followed by Amon. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment on these.
Let's see. Okay, so I think in these 3 chapters, let me see. Okay, so first I'd like to talk about the title. Okay, so I would like everyone pay attention on the title, and I put this title not without the reason, because I used the Bo Su, that's one version, okay, which is reverse De and the Dao. They come with the title. So that created another challenge, because I need to think about how does the title connect with the content. So the title is also important. I just like to mention on this one. So I'd like to talk about is this one, okay? The never fullness, that's also comes with the title. And then this one is kind of like talk about Dao, and same thing, just like the chapter 8 talk about the form of water, they teach you lessons, and by contemplating the feature, the property of water. Here also provide another way of teaching. They give you 7 lessons, but give you some image, all right? If you teach the moral lesson, or it's very difficult to teach, then let's think about the way ancient Chinese teach. In Taoism, talk about prudence. Then, as you think about walking through in the winter, so close the water, talking about the vigilant, thinking about like today is like Israel, right? You're surrounded by the strong neighbor. How are you going to be vigilant? Okay, think about, tell you about dignify. Think about you visit your boss home. Okay, that's dignified. Think about what's meaning of relax, simple, you know, all this kind of lesson that bring the image to you. So I think that's an interesting part. We can pay attention on that. So I would like to hear how everyone learned from these 3 chapters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Next up is Amon, and folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark.
I'll be really brief. I wanted to say off the subject of this and just with the general reading, to Greg specifically, thank you. Anyone who does find a typo, please put it in there. I take the note and we'll try and correct later, because more eyes, the better. Spell check doesn't catch everything. And as far as these 3 chapter goes, there's a theme here as well. I believe it's the learning to be wary of what is commonly desired and learning to embrace what is often undesirable. And especially in this chapter that's up right now, prudent as if wading through a stream in winter, vigilant as if fearing surrounding neighbors, dignified as if paying a formal visit, unwound like melting ice. All these images, uncarved block, melting ice, formal visits, fearful of your neighbors, streams in winter, muddy water, these are undesirable things. And the sage is, as it is dignified, unwound, simple, vast, with these unwanted things. Combined with the lessons from 13, where it's talking about fame and shame, and you know what people generally want is fame, what they fear is shame, but you should be very cautious of this dichotomy being at work in you. The advice is move away from the commonly desired, learn to embrace the undesired, because there are wonderful glimpses of enlightenment, being the fool who will go where angels fear to tread.
Thank you, Amon. I just want to give everybody feedback on the time. I think we're doing pretty well on time. We're about 1 hour into this, and we've covered about 15. So we are on track to finish about 30, which is fine. I think everybody is keeping their comments brief, and they are saying a lot, which is just beautiful. So I think we are on good track. Next up is going to be James, followed by Kevin. James. James, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to comment on number 13. I thought that the fame and shame are kind of both opposite effects, are like opposite effects of external intrusion on one's complacence. And so they're both internal and external intrusion on one's internal complacence and happiness. And the great misfortune should be treated like caring for your body. That's very profound. In other words, when great misfortune occurs, treat it as if it's a indignation, a physical indignation on your body. In other words, it's basically something that should cause you to treat it. And also the consideration, what do you mean by treat it with fear? And so that kind of like confirms my feeling or inspired my feeling. But on the other hand, we should be fearful when we gain or lose fame. And so just the idea of the world is going to treat you mentally in the same, it's just as profound for the world to impinge upon you mentally as it is for it to impinge upon you physically.
Thank you, James. Thank you. Next up is Kevin.
Yes, thank you. From chapter 13, it's the first two is press 2. I like the title, Fame and Shame. You see, the English is beautiful too here, this case, right? It's a brother, sister, like one coin, two sides. Treated shame, fame with fear, and appreciate the companies in own bodies, stay in the core middle. And chapter 14, I use the last two, 知古之道, 以喻经之有. By applying I'm going to read Jason's translate, applying their ancient Dao to harness today's reality. I'm going to do it here. Is like for example, my big mouth, like for example, our North America, like Canada, US, we last for 200 years history from modern days. We need to learn from those ancient places back to 2,000, 3,000 years old history. Learn a lot. History repeat themselves. Can we, like, if by human nature, is really we cannot change? If we can change, what we should change? Chapter 15. My choice last two. 夫为不盈，故能必不兴成. It's because they never desire fullness. They can preserve without being reformed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Joe.
Number 13, just make a quick just one quick comment, an observation, is that I really think that it's speaking about us with the ego and how we essentially view ourselves in the world. So that, once we have this idea of shame and fear, or being ashamed, that we start behaving out of fear, and that takes us away from nature, and that takes us away from actually being acting as a rational human being. So that's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jason, could you use the full screen view if you click on view and do full screen?
Oh yeah, okay, I forget. Okay. Is it better?
Yeah, but better. Thank you. All right, so we'll go to the next one. It is going to be 16, and I will read that, followed by Margarita.
Jang has.
Okay.
Okay, returning to the root. Attain to the utmost passivism. Hold to the truly quiet. All things have lives, but I see them returning. Because they flourish, then they return to their roots. Returning to the roots is called quiet. It is fulfilling their destination. It is the unchanging law. Those who understand this unchanging law are enlightened. Those who don't understand this unchanging law act recklessly, causing disasters. Can you scroll down? Okay. Political advices, from personal to public, from small to large, from tangible to intangible, from spatial to temporal. 1, knowing the unchanging law, one can deal with appearances, that is personal affairs. 2, knowing the appearances, one can deal with public affairs. 3, knowing public affairs, one can deal with political affairs. 4, knowing political affairs, one can deal with heaven's affairs. 5, knowing heaven's affairs, one can know how to deal with the Dao. 6, knowing how to deal with the Dao, one can govern for eternity. Thus, your governing never fails, even without your involvement, that is the corporeal self. Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by James. Margarita.
Yeah. Knowing presence. The best ruler is one whose presence is unknown. The second best is one who is beloved and praised. The next one who is feared. The next worst is one who is despised. If ruler does not have enough confidence, the people will not have confidence in him. The ruler should relax and spare his words. Whenever a job is successfully completed, the people would say, "We have the job done by itself."
Thank you, Margarita. Next up is James. James, you need to unmute.
4 beings. When the great Dao decays, there is teaching of benevolence and righteousness. When knowledge and intelligence are praised, there are hypocrisies. When the family relationships are discordant, there are people of filial piety. When countries fall into political chaos, there are loyal ministers.
Thank you, James. So folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment on this. Next up is going to be Amon, followed by Jason. Amon.
I won't take much time. I just want to say, especially chapter 18 is one of my favorites. It's the call out of Confucian values, and so much of it feels as true then as it was now, especially when you see when countries fall into political chaos, there are loyal ministers. Anytime things are going terrible, there are going to be lick spittles at your heels telling you you're doing a great job.
Thank you, Amon. Next up is Jason.
Yeah, I just same as Amon. I think I think in many sense in chapter 2 talk about relativity, duality. Same thing, you know, when we promote the Confucian's virtue like benevolence, righteousness. That means you don't have Dao. and then too much in the intelligence, smartness, then hypocrisies come out. Why we talk about filial piety? Because you have a family problem. Why you praise the royal minister? Because your country has a problem. So it's very satirical talking in a way you can think about it this way, but it's worthwhile to think about when we promote virtue. What's the reason we talk about this? I think that's the one thing to let us to reflect, our teaching or the lesson we are learning. Number 17. I think this one talking about leadership, but I just try to be honored with the title from the original. So they call knowing being. Okay, that's little to little. So I still working on that. Okay, so I'm very happy if everybody can give me suggestion. How do you feel on all this one? And the number 16. Again, I thank you, Shurinkam. He like the number on that, and probably from your Indian background, because when I read Buddhism teaching, it comes with all kinds of number. Sometimes I'm happy with that. Sometimes I'm very, very confused because that shows the complexity of the teaching. But anyway, that's worth to think about. And thank you, Shrinka, for this comment.
Thank you, Jason. I mean, the words, the numbering is very much of serial way of thinking, which is very different from the Chinese way of thinking, because Chinese way of thinking is to put everything there and have people react to it. This is very much kind of Western or Indian way of thinking, of saying this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go in the sequence, and you will get this. It's a sequence. It's a very profound point. I just want to say that number 16 is one of my favorites. If you could scroll up a little bit. So all things that live, all things have lives, but I see them returning because they flourish. They then return to their roots. Returning to the roots is called quiet. It is fulfilling their destination. That is the unchanging law. So this idea of center and periphery, 10,000 things and the Dao, that's like the heart of everything. So I just love this. Next up is going to be Cheng, Evanik, Yogeshwar, and Joe. Cheng.
Yeah, I also really like the last one, the 18, I think. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. They shows how the paradox, I found same as country, and even the person I found, like personal experience, I have a lot of clients, if somebody said, I'm very loyal, usually that's a very bad sign. So if a person said he's very loyal, usually that person, I have experienced personally many times. You said as very loyal, usually the person is not. Same as companies. Company told you, we treat our employee very nice. They never fire anybody. Usually that's the company who fire. Because if the virtue is obvious, you don't have to emphasize. The people emphasize. And also I found if people tell you take it easy, usually they are very nervous. So I found it's kind of interesting that people tell you to take it easy. There is a person who's nervous in themselves. So I found it's kind of interesting psychologically, like if people emphasize something, is usually that's what they aware or subconsciously aware that they don't have. So they emphasize, I really have this, I have the quality. But if it's already have it, they don't even notice. Like you have it, you don't even aware you have it. Because you aware you don't have it, then you subconsciously emphasize you have it. Anyway, I found it's quite interesting. Same as a country, if people emphasize some kind of virtue in the society, that means they don't have that virtue in the society. That's why they promote it.
Thank you, Cheng. Really great observation. Next up is Evanik, followed by Yogeshwar. Evanik.
Yeah, going back to 16, where it talks about that sequence where it says dealing. Go down up a little bit. Well, down. Sorry. Where it talks about knowing the unchanging law, one can deal with the appearances, and then it's like knowing one thing allows you to deal with another. And then once you've dealt with another, then you go into the next level. So I feel like it is, you know, I'm still unclear what the unchanging law is, but I think it's nature. That's what it appears to me to be. So knowing nature, you can deal with appearances, personal affairs, because you know it's all going to work out. And then, you know, all that sequence is showing is that once you like, it's like knowing and dealing with, and then knowing appearances, one can deal with public affairs. It's like once you know something, then you can deal with the next thing, the next level of growth. And then it all goes back to the Tao at the end, where it says, knowing how to deal with the Tao, one can govern for eternity. So once you learn the Tao, or learn how to deal with the Tao, which means to me following the way of the Tao, then you can govern for eternity because you're governing from the Tao, and the Tao is perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Avanik. Next up is Yogeshwar, Joe, and Kevin. Yogeshwar.
On chapter 17, just if we could scroll to chapter 17.
Go ahead, Yogeshwar.
Yeah, so here, so actually knowing the presence, even in our daily lives, like people who, like we always work in organizations, we work at our home and stuff. So in a way, we are at some place in our homes or in the organization or somewhere, wherever we're doing some work. So if, like, this is the thing, if we are feared by other people, it doesn't mean that we are greatest. So these are all the steps. We always feel that how people work is if they will fear us, they will work more. But that's not always the case. It's giving us more steps that are ahead of our thinking, basically. So the best thing is if our presence is not known, but still work is happening, that's the best thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Next up is Joe.
Just could you go to 18? I just yes, I mean, this is one of my favorites as well. When knowledge and intelligence are praised, there are hypocrisies. I mean, this idea that there's a difference between acting virtuous and being virtuous. I also like the idea of when countries fall into political chaos, there are loyal ministers. These are indications that there's something fundamentally wrong, and that you actually should be aware of actually when somebody is being loyal to you in the midst of chaos. That's problematic. That's when you should be most concerned. And I think that this is actually a warning, and it's as true, it holds true today as it did back then.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Sorry, did you have more on more?
I didn't.
Okay, thank you. Next up is going to be Kevin, followed by Katie. Kevin.
Yes, thank you. For chapter 16, my pick is 万物并作，无以观复. All my translation, all things performs at the same time. I observe the turn of the root. I observe the root. What's like especially these days, social media and that is very soon to follow. So I got what's original. Look back could be find answer too. Chapter 17. Last, 功成事遂，百姓皆为我治啊. The job was successfully done. The people would believe I have the job done by ourselves. So I would say change itself to ourselves. Chapter 18. This one, 18. Though I like all the common. I give one from my own observation called is misfortune tests the sincerity of friends. From the personal relationship to the country to the intelligence, you find the what's fault. And from Dao, Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Katie. Katie, go ahead.
My comment relates to number 17. I think like that, I see Wu Wei written all over this chapter, like a ruler rules through non-action. I think my personal opinion is maybe a little bit somewhere more in the middle. This is kind of like a ruler is unknown. Mine would be like, a ruler facilitates and is great himself and uses what's natural in people, and the other stream would be a dictator who's trying to. I do like that they're putting it like a dictator, someone who's trying to teach and use rules, and not a minimalist and tries to teach everything. So I'm kind of somewhere more in the middle, but I like the idea of that a lot of people's is coming from themselves. So if you're working and someone tells you, the job does itself, it doesn't feel like any recognition if that's what someone's saying.
Well, thank you. Folks, go ahead and type a R to read. Go ahead and type a R to read the next one. We're going to go to James. James followed by Nikolai.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to, just on that one that we just read, was number 17, I think.
Oh, you want to, sorry, go ahead.
I apologize, yeah. I just wanted to say that I love the reference to the ruler who that lacks confidence, because that reminds me of like seeing a resume where the person is saying that I was able to do these things, and I think that it was the best possible job, or I've never heard of a better solution to this problem. In other words, someone gives their opinion, and it's really a sign of lacking confidence. So that a manager should always have enough confidence in themselves to not claim too much about what was accomplished, even though something is always accomplished. And the second part was that the very best job is always the one that doesn't look like there was any work done. In other words, there's no artifacts after the job is complete. When it looks like no work was done, that is the best work.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jason, could you go ahead and, yeah, thank you. All right. Next up, we're going to have Nikolai, Joe, and Margarita reading. Nikolai.
Thank you. Uncarved block. Without sagehood and knowledge, the common people will live much better lives, 100 times more profitable. Without benevolence and righteousness, the common people will naturally practice filial piety. Without exquisite and expensive goods, thieves and robbers have no incentive. These three teachings are just superficial and insufficient. Thus, you need to work on your temperament. Reveal plainness, embrace simplicity, uncarved block, reduce selfishness, lessen desires, cease learning how to govern, and stop worrying.
Thank you, Nikolai. Next up is Joe.
Fed by mother. Cease learning how to govern and stop worrying. What is the difference between yes, sir, and yay? What is the difference between good and evil? Must I fear what others fear? What an absurd situation. I will reject it. Never get this absurd situation. Everyone has a great time, as if they were enjoying a feast, or as if they were visiting the terrace in the spring. I alone stay quiet and have no future plans. I am dazed like a baby without a voice. I wander about like I have no place to go. Everyone has enough to spare. I alone seem to be at a loss. My heart is like the fool's. Most people appear bright, but I alone appear dusky. Most people observe outward, but I alone observe within. I feel wavy and calm like the open ocean. I feel unlimited and endless like the strong wind.
Thank you.
They-
Thank you, Joe.
I have more. I have more.
I
sorry.
just saw them more. They all have their own goals, but I alone still remain unsophisticated. I alone am different from them. I value being fed by my mother.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Margarita.
Following Dao. The appearance of De only follows Dao. There is only vagueness when Dao is treated as a substance. But there is an image in the vagueness. There is a substance in the vagueness. The essence that substance is in deep and darkness. What we believe is its essence and reality. From the present back to antiquity, its manifestation never disappears. Through it, we can understand the beginning of all things. How do we know the beginning state of all things? From this reason.
Thank you. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to comment. We're going to start with Jason, followed by Amon. Jason.
Okay, that's these three chapters. Let me comment one by one. Chapter 19 is talking about basics, is talking about the start to introduce the concept of so-called uncarved block, Pu. I think we have talked about this one in our meetup. Two big concepts in the entire Dao De Jing. First is Wu Wei, which is on the political side. How do you deal with outside world? And the second thing is Pu, the uncarved block. Basics is talking about yourself. What's your own virtue? How you would like to be. So Pu is uncarved block, which is like a tree trunk, and it's not polished. Okay, so that's the concept we are talking about. So this chapter basics similar to chapter, I think it's 18, the virtue. Okay, and then you don't need the virtue. I think Jen explained very well. You know, because you lack of some virtue, that's why you want to promote this virtue. And then the best way by the best virtue in Dao De Jing, probably the Pu. Okay, just uncarved block. That's Dao De Jing is talking about. And this one I mentioned before is talking about, the title is Shi Mu, eat mother. So I translate as the fed by mother. So basics, I think Lao Tzu or whoever who write this one is talking about after seeing this world, after done all the things, he is retiring. He is decide to leave this world. I think the tone is very different on this chapter. Basics you can read as I'm retiring. I'm going back to my hometown. This kind of writing. I will see this chapter is very different from rest of 80 chapter. 21, following the Dao, and then this one is, I think this one is very metaphysical teaching on this one. So basics is talking about kind of like connect Dao and the De, okay, kind of like give the, well, of course, they have a different way of read the Dao De Jing, like Bo Su, put the De first and then later talk about Dao. But basically, we can consider this chapter is a connection between Dao and the De. Okay, so the first sentence, the appearance of the De only follows Dao. So we, for sure, we know Dao is the higher this formless, nameless, you know, you cannot reach it. And the De is something, you probably can feel it, you probably can follow it if you do something. So I think that's kind of use metaphysical way to connect Dao and the De together. So it's, I will say that this chapter is very rare in Chinese, ancient Chinese writing, and talk about metaphysics. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up is Amon.
I think chapters 1 through 18 were the primer. And at 18, you're left with an opportunity to laugh at all your other teachers. At 19, you're told, but here's really why this is this teaching is superficial and insufficient. And what does that mean? If this is superficial, you need to go deeper. And in the next 2 chapters, we begin that deeper examination of these ideas. So as profound as 1 through 18 are, it's almost saying, all right, now it's time to buckle in and get serious, because this lesson gets much, much deeper.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Amon. I had not noticed that. That's great observation. Next up is going to be Nikolai, followed by Cheng. Nikolai.
Hi. So I think chapter 20, Fed by Mother, spoke to me during a hard time. It was a very personal note in terms of mental health. And I think, as Jason noted, this is quite a stark contrast to pretty much the rest of the body of the work. It's the part that really got to me was sort of, I alone stay quiet and have no future plans, and sort of while others have goals, there's no sophistication. And I've always kind of like, in the modern society, there's this outward expression of happiness and having plans and goals and kind of seeking this self-fulfillment through external means. And chapter 20 to me just really spoke to the idea of just letting kind of everything go. And it doesn't have a very jovial sense to it, in my opinion, of the teaching here. And what it's saying, it's more the acceptance of, it's okay not to have all those things. It's okay to just be alone doing your own thing. And it's all right not to have tremendous future planned out for yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nikolai. Next up is going to be Cheng.
Yeah, I also found chapter 20 is kind of very different from all the other chapters. I was thinking about who is me, this it's all about the beginning, and later they all talk about this more like universal law, Dao. Then suddenly it's talk about more personal experience. It's quite different. What I really found interesting is they're talking about the person is more like an uncarded block. It's very different from what the people think successful people are, not even in America, but also in China in general, in a society. And it reminded me of quite interesting. My friend just told me how the company keep asking her to set goal. And I said, oh, you're living more like a Dao. And I told her about the Dao De Jing we study, because the people who actually live in the moment, they're working harder. She's doing her duty. She's my old coworker. But then said that people like me because more relaxed, but at the same time they ask me to set goals. But I just say that's so different. The Western culture is all about goal setting in the corporate, very different from what Dao De Jing teaching us.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheng. I also want to comment on number 20. I always have liked the metaphor of the baby in this. I see this as saying that everybody else is engaged in culture, operating on cultural norms, whereas I'm going back to nature, and that's where I'm starting from. So that's the thing that I get from it. Next up is going to be Kevin.
Yes, thank you. For me, chapter 19, I value the last one. 戒俗暴朴，守私寡欲. Observe plainness, embrace simplicity, reduce self-faceness, lessen desire. See the learning. I would change the terminate the sacred and reject intelligence. That's this like when we make friends or something, we don't want to make people too smart. Every time they benefit themselves. It's so bored. Yeah, that's chapter 20. I would it's called last one. We curious about what do异于人 and what's that? And 故而贵师母. I would say 我 here not just Dao self. I would say people who like Dao, like Laozi, they try follow the Dao. Then that's the root for for the like a mother. Yeah.
Thank you.
And-
Go ahead.
Oh, that's
Sorry, Kevin, you wanted to comment on number 21?
Yes, if 21 already done. Okay, thank you.
Kevin, go ahead. If you would like to comment on 21, please do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's check 21 is the first one. 孔德之容，微道是从. It's like yourself, like we value, let's say, a formal follow function. If you consider Dao is function, De is form, follow function. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, folks, we're going to go to the next 3 verses. Go ahead and type R if you would like to read. It's going to be Nikolai followed by Joe. Nikolai.
Thank you. Chapter 22, holding the one. Yielding will remain whole. A bent branch will become straight. Low ground will receive water. Withered leaves will grow new sprouts. Possessing less will provide chances to gain. Possessing too much will cause one to be uncommitted. Therefore, the sage holds the one, the Dao, and becomes an exemplar to the world. Not revealing himself so he can be known, not asserting himself so he can be appreciated, not flaunting himself so he can be given credit, not revering himself so he can endure. Because he does not compete with others, no one in the world would compete with him. The saying from antiquity that yielding will remain whole are not just vain words. Indeed, the whole world would gather around him.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Joe.
Verse 23, together with the Dao. Use few words and let things be. Hence, a strong wind does not last a whole morning. A rainstorm does not continue for a whole day. How is this so? Nature. Therefore, those who govern with the Dao, if nature cannot make these last, how can men? Therefore, those who govern with the Dao will be together with people of the Dao. Those who govern with the De will be together with the people of De. Those who govern without Dao or De will be together with the people without Dao or De. The people of Dao will be happy with the Dao. The people with De will be happy with De. The people without Dao or De will be happy without them. If the ruler does not have enough confidence, the people will not have confidence in him.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Evanik.
Chapter 24, avoid being with. He who stands on tiptoe does not stand firm. He who strains his pace does not walk well. He who reveals himself cannot be known. He who asserts himself cannot be appreciated. He who flaunts himself cannot be given credit. He who reveals himself cannot endure. Speaking from the point of view of the Tao, these are like leftover food or unwanted fat, which are things of disgust. Therefore, the people of the Tao avoid being with them.
Thank you, Evanik. So next up is going to be Amon, followed by Jason, and then go ahead and type ! To comment on this. Amon.
I'll be brief. I'd say these 3 are telling, learn to yield and be a person of the Tao. That's really the crux of these 3 chapters.
Wonderful. Next up is Jason.
Okay, so that's from 22. Okay, so if you pay attention, you find out the 4 things. Okay, the not revealing, not asserting, not flaunting, not revering yourself. Repeat on the 24, right? If you see it on the 24, okay, he talk about same thing again, but in a different way. Okay, he talk about don't if you do something bad, then you cannot be known. If you assert, he assert himself cannot be appreciated. If the person who front himself cannot be given credit. Okay, the person who reserve himself cannot endure. So this kind of four virtue or four teaching, it's a repeat. Okay, so it's interesting, seems like not revealing, not asserting, not fronting, not reversing, reverse yourself are all important in the virtual teaching here. And then 23 is a little bit different. I think famous sentence is talking about a lot of people in Chinese or language would I could quote this word, the 飘风不终日，骤雨不终，飘风不终朝，骤雨不终日. That's a very famous saying, talk about in the nature, the strong wind never lasts long, the rainstorm will last the whole day. So basically it's talking about everything strong, it never lasts. And the political teaching, I think here he talk about, it's very controversial, people have different opinion. My opinion here is talking about, as a ruler, if you deal with Dao, that's fine. If deal with De, that's fine. If even without Dao, without De, that's also fine. You will deal with different kind of people. Only this lesson you learn is the first sentence here. Being strong, forceful, it never lasts. Okay, so follow the nature. I think that's they try to say. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's go to the last three ones, and then we'll have to wrap up. We've got about 15 minutes. So let's go to the next three. Who would like to read? James, go ahead and read. Number 24.
25.
25? 25, yeah. James, you need to unmute.
Apologies. There's formlessness. There is something formless prior to heaven and earth. It is soundless and formless, independent and unchanging, revolving endlessly. It may be thought of as the mother of the world. I do not know its name, so I just call it Tao, and arbitrarily name it great. To be great is to travel on. To travel on is to travel far. To travel far is to return. Therefore, the Tao is great. Heaven is great. Earth is great. Man is also great. There are four greatnesses in the universe, and man is one of them. Man follows the ways of earth. Earth follows the ways of heaven. Heaven follows the ways of Tao. Tao follows its own ways.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Dave, followed by Margarita. Dave.
Chapter 26, Heavy Equipment. The heavy is the foundation of the light. The resting controls the restless. That is why the officer always travels with his heavy supplies. Yet staying in his grand mansion, he keeps himself at rest. But why does a ruler embody such lightness in his rule? Because lightness loses its foundation. Restlessness loses its control.
Thank you. Next up is Margarita.
The hidden intelligence. The skillful move, leaving no traces to follow. The skillful speak, leaving no flaws to blame. The skillful enumerate, using no counters. The skillful are able to shut the gates, using no bars, but they cannot be opened. The skillful bond, using no ropes, but their knots cannot be untied. Therefore, the sages are always skillful at keeping everyone's, because nobody is abandoned as useless. The sages are always skillful at keeping things, because nothing is abandoned as useless. This is called the hidden intelligence, because the skillful are teachers for the unskillful. The unskillful are mirrors for the skillfuls. Those who do not value their teacher or do not use their mirror would be lost, even if they are knowledgeable. This is the key to the unknownability.
Thank you. So it's going to be Jason, followed by Amon, and then we're going to open now. At this point, you guys can, so let's just focus on these first, and then I'm going to do general comments on this entire series so far. So Jason.
Okay, then 25 is Dao De Jing's cosmology, okay, theory, right? So start from the beginning of the universe. It's vague, huge, okay? Doesn't matter you agree or disagree, but basically that's the ancient Taoism is talking about. That's the world from the beginning, and then that's great. Then going down, okay, from the Tao, from the heaven, from the earth, then from the people. So I think that's, and talk about the man follow the earth, earth follow the heaven, heaven follow the Tao, Tao follow by itself. So basics, that's the entire cosmology, okay, it's talking about. And I like to mention this one is very different from the, if you compare to the ancient Greek, in the Greek time, if you read the Timaeus, okay, in Plato's dialogue. If you look at the universe, how they, both are wrong, okay, that's for sure. But if you look at how they see the world, it's very different. Chinese way of seeing the universe is use people as the center. So the universe is organic, okay? And the Western world is more on the inorganic. So people is outside, okay? So I think that's very interesting to compare these two things instead of judging them how correct of they are doing. But if you look at it, that's a different way to look at it. So they both have the advantage and the disadvantage, and we can discuss later. But basics, that's I like to focus on that. And then this one basics is talking about 26 is talking about what's the root, what's the heavy. Heavy means the stable. Okay, so that's the another teaching on 26. And 27 basics. I don't have much comment on this one, but basics is talking about. I think it's a very similar situation. Like talk about skillful. Okay, what's the good way? Counting without the counter, and then the good speak is nothing to blend. Okay, so I stop here. Yeah, thank you.
Amon.
Yeah, I'll try to be as terse as I've been able to be so far, which is, as many of you know who are here Tuesday, difficult for me. I do think that 25 is one of the metaphysical chapters of the Dao De Jing. It begins to sort of intimate what the Dao is, although we're told right off the bat that's insufficient to actually express it. And here, once again, I don't know its name. So I just call it the Dao, and I give it the attribute of being great, which is kind of funny because the rest of it after that is, these are just designations, as is the designation of man being great, earth being great, the Dao is great. It's all great. There's almost a unspoken ho-hum in this chapter. That's when I read this subtextually, I read it as language, ho-hum. It doesn't capture what the Dao is. When you go to 26 and 27, then we start getting at this idea of 26 less, more 27, where it begins talking about hidden knowledge. Though I think within 26, there is some idea of unburdening yourself. What do you need to unburden yourself from? Well, the associations that you attach with language. And what comes from that? When you start exploring knowledge without language, well, then you begin to encounter hidden knowledge, which is the chapter title of 27. And this is, once again, that deeper lesson. Here's how you make this exploration. You're not going to do it through language. You're going to do it by unburdening yourself from the shackles that you've gained through the acquisition of language and being able to skillfully observe, skillfully, examine, you'll gain this hidden knowledge, which is the knowledge of what this thing we call the Tao is. And as that knowledge gets greater, your De will become greater as well. You will have the virtue of someone who is able to make this examination. I think that's what's in these 3 chapters. But in all of this, we're moving from freshman education into sophomore education, and there will be an even deeper sort of level than that, though I'd say it really only works in 3s: 3 levels of Dao, 3 levels of Da.
Wonderful. Folks, let's do one thing. Now it's time for us to wrap up. So instead of going in details of this one, now I want you to comment on this entire experience as a whole. So Jason, if you could stop sharing. Thank you. Thank you. So we can now talk about the experience of reading the whole thing. I'm going to go to Jason and Amon last on this one. Jason, what is your, do you have a hard cutoff? Do you have a hard cutoff? Do you have 5 minutes?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Very good. If you want, if you have a time limit, you can go ahead and comment first.
Okay, I comment last. That's fine.
Okay, folks, so go ahead and type exclamation mark, not to comment on these 3, but about the whole experience, not about any particular topic, whole experience of going through these 27 together.
If I can, I do have a hard cutoff.
Please, then Amon, you're first. You're first.
And
go
so
ahead.
I just want to thank everyone once again. It's really nice to get a chance to sort of share something that you're working on with people who are as excited about it, and getting to hear it in this sort of format really is nice for gaining that larger, broader view, and getting more feedback, hearing things or takes that I wouldn't necessarily have gotten before. I don't have a lot to add beyond my gratitude and my appreciation to Jason, to Shikant, to all of you. I will say I have been given grief for never visibly being here on a Tuesday because of my from work to shower to Zoom. But I've seen a bunch of black boxes who I've never seen a face to, who get no grief like I've got. So I want those laser beams being focused. And I'm looking at you, Katie and Kevin and iPhone 1225. Thank you all. I like seeing you. Have a great day. Yeah, I got to run. I will see you on Tuesday night.
Amon, I have to tell you, I strongly disagree with just one statement that you made, that you are not terse. Actually, you say amazing things in a very short way. So that's the only thing.
My defense panel would not agree with you. Thank you all.
Thanks. See you. All right, folks. So it's time to comment on what you got from this meetup. It's going to be Joe followed by Nikolai. Joe.
I found this to be very helpful, specifically because when I started out reading the Tao, I was reading initially like 3 translations, maybe 4. And then during the week now, I read about 5 or 6. But having this one and having people comment on this one brings a whole new perspective for me. So it's actually, I was looking back at my notes and I was seeing it and I'm thinking to myself, really, this particular recording is actually going to be of great assistance to me in understanding the Tao as a whole, like from my work that I do outside of here and this. So I thought that this was a fantastic session. I mean, it's always a pleasure to have Jason and Amon here. And I really liked the way this flowed, and I enjoyed everybody's input.
Wonderful. And we're going to continue this 2 weeks from now. We'll just start with where we left off and try to finish everything that Jason has translated by next 2 weeks from now. All right, next up is going to be Nikolai. Nikolai, go ahead, followed by Kevin.
All right, thank you. I thought it was incredibly helpful to have it done in such a large set, as it's easier to sort of see the patterns of how things are written and how they kind of interplay and go in between sort of the political, the personal, the metaphysical, and kind of seeing that play out and having other people's perspectives. So this has been incredibly enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikolai. Next up is Kevin.
Yes, thank you. For me, I got a couple points. One, follow the chapter 23. So that's one of I said you can follow Dao or De or neither of them. That's the option. That's how beautiful. Obviously, this attitude about the author or whoever read it down after the Kunzi time or Laozi time. So let's give people option. Normally, if you look at a current book or production, normally, okay, here's the product I have. You follow this. This I designed this way. I'm good. So normally they don't talk to another side, or let's see, give another option. Let's refer to actually let's go to other thing. Another point is unknown. The first chapter is already
No. What was your impression of doing this whole thing together?
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful because you put it together. It's like as a whole. Even we try grab the whole chapter. Initially, you could chapter by chapter. You can learn something. If you put all together, something. That's why a good doing summary. Here's one. Another is 2 points to connect to you. Unknown. That's so important. We learn unknown self, and from a known, learn unknown. The key thing is, and also duality. You see that their sentence form normally say not yin and yang way, a dark and the light. They normally the both sides. That's even this kind of sentence is embedded in Chinese culture. Normally don't say yes or no. They normally say from this way, another way, and look at both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Margarita, how is this?
Yeah, it's quite a lot. I try to focus on reading because there are things that I kind of forgot. Then I start to pick up how we start from being nebula, and then we start to acquire language, to be water, to be fed by the mother, to be the uncarved wood. But then again, you need to empty yourself because you want to do the Wu Wei and everything. It's quite beautiful. And I think my personal take on this, that we do have to do series of learning mistakes, and that's okay. And we can restructure everything again as like empty vase. That's a learning process. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Margaret. I think this worked out really well. Let me see. First, Jen, go ahead. How was it?
Yeah, I think this is great because Dao De Jing is so profound. I think you really have to read many times, and also with your own life experience, others' experience, to fully understand it. It's just not like you get it at one time. It's like you can keep reading it the whole life. You understand a very different perspective. And reading together and also reading in depth, I think they both work very well together because you can see more in details, and the other are more in the bigger picture. So I think it's great you guys host this. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. I just love this. The way my mind works is that I'm always trying to see patterns. So I think this combination of going like an eagle flying over the whole thing and then swooping in and looking at the details of things, that we are doing a lot of detailed work, really detailed work. And thanks to Jason and Amon, we're able to zoom in on each character, characters. So we are able to do that. But I think being able to kind of take this overview is extremely useful to me. Jason, what did you think?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm great. Shrink are only limited to 2 hours. So, because I thought that would be easy job for me because I'm not in the focus. You guys talk and then I just comment. So it's easy. But turn out it's tiring. Okay, so I'm great in not doing as original proposed 3 hours. Then I probably drop dead by then. Okay, so look, I'm very happy to listen to somebody read what I wrote down, okay, it's very different. Okay, so I noticed some mistake, something I should improve. Thank you very much, everybody. And when you guys comment, and then always remind me. Okay, so many people are focused on different things. A lot of time we all focus on, I agree with you, I agree with you. But a lot of time we didn't say, a lot of disagree, but at the beginning, but after that, I realized there's some angle I miss. Okay, so thank you everyone, and then this one is very helpful, and then
Thank you.
Actually, I